So if you don't
Thank you.
mind, Maya, let's dive in. First, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was raised Catholic. I don't currently practice Catholicism. I'm 52 as we're recording this, and I stepped out of the Catholic box about 25 years ago. But I still have respect for, all of it. It's all, and there's still some parts of it that I really like, some of the rituals and the rosary. I always loved the rosary. Um, and my college degree was in education. And I was just thinking today as I was managing my work day, I was like, wow, the teacher foundation that I had is really serving me. It's really helping me to serve others. Of course, as a school teacher, I was teaching younger people, but then I did that for about 9 years in my 20s. And then after that, I started teaching adults. And I'll just backtrack a little bit and say that even when I was a teacher in my 20s, like a standard school teacher, I was also in the role of spiritual teacher for adults and energy healer on the side, kind of like in secret, incognito, because I was working for the Catholic Church. I was working at a Catholic school, and then I was like a Reiki master, and it was like, ooh, the Catholic Church. Now, back then, they didn't have an official stance on it like they do now. Now, the official stance, I think, last time I heard, so I could be wrong now, but last time I heard the official stance was they don't like Reiki or energy healing or anything like that. That's fine, totally fine. But anyway, I was like incognito doing Reiki sessions in my home, and also that was when I was receiving training in intuitive work because I was always a natural intuitive. I had a lot of spiritual experiences growing up and psychic experiences growing up, but I couldn't do it at will like I can now. Like I can just tune in all the time, like 24/7. But so I started off as a school teacher, and then I was doing the feel good spiritual work in my 20s and in my 30s. Um, so I gave up school teaching at the end of my 20s. I shifted into um, spiritual and empowerment work, mostly worked with women in my 30s. It was just what I was drawn to. And I was in the mix of that, I was teaching belly dancing and drumming and women's retreats, and I was doing energy healing. Like it was a very interesting time. I look back and I'm like, wow, that was really fun. But and it was all like the feel good stuff. Like I wasn't doing any of the uncomfortable topics
Yeah.
that I do now. Like I work with some really hard things that a lot of people don't want to talk about, that it's like really deep work now. Some people could think of it as negative. It's like there's some dark stuff that we have to face. Like people who have been looking for years for someone to help them with a psychic attack or an ancestral curse or an entity attachment for years, and
Yeah.
they've tried to work with different practitioners who didn't really know how to deal with such a severe situation, and then they find me, and then I'm there to help them. I don't think I'm the only person on the planet who does this work, but I hear this again and again that like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for like 15 years,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh, thank God that you found me. I'm really grateful because it's a good match. But back then I was doing all like the happy dancing around and drumming. But here's the thing, living on this planet is really hard, and we need the feel good activities. So I
Mm.
just want to give a lot of praise and love to all of the feel good practitioners out there because we need you. We need the fun dancing classes, the spiritual movement classes and the belly dancing classes and the drumming and the empowerment and the energy healing that's very calming and soothing. Like we need all of that
Mm.
just to like thrive in
Yeah.
this reality. So thank you to all of you who are doing that. And I just remember back to when I was in the middle of doing all of the feel good work. I maybe just like a couple of times, I had a client here or there who I could tell had something in their energy. I was like, there's an entity, but
Mm,
that part of me wasn't switched on
mm,
until 2016 where I could like really see it. And so before then, I'd be like, yeah, there's something here. It's like male. It feels really dark. But I didn't want to touch it because I was smart enough to know that at the time, I don't have the training or the know how to do this safely for
mm,
myself or the client. Because if we don't know what we're doing, we can actually there's a term that I use now that's causing that's if we try to remove something in the wrong way, then we can cause backlash. So then the entity digs in even further and tortures the person. There's all sorts of not good things that can happen. So at least I was smart enough back then to take those things seriously, because there are a lot of practitioners who say that those things don't exist, or it's just a reflection of some unhealed inner child or something like that. I knew that those things existed, and I knew to how to not make it worse. But then fast forward to 2016, I went to an energy healer, to a colleague, basically for a second opinion
mm,
on. There was somebody in my community someone in my spiritual community who was a spiritual worker who is a sexual predator
mm,
working in our spiritual community. And I was feeling as though he might be psychically attacking me. I was having some symptoms of psychic attack. And I wanted to get a second opinion on it. And she said that that was something that she specialized in, that she helped people with that sort of thing. And I didn't know that before. I said, "Oh, great. I didn't know that about you. I thought you were the angel lady. I didn't know you did this other stuff." So I
mhm,
went to her for a consultation, just basically to get a second opinion and see what she thought about it. To my huge surprise, after that, that small, what seemed like a small psychic attack, multiplied times 100. And I was under the most severe psychic attack that I had ever experienced. I had had a couple of times where people had sent me some weird energy. Some people who practiced black magic had sent some things, and there was some funky energy and I cleared it, but this was a whole other thing. And
wow,
honestly, it would take the whole interview to go through all of the crazy details of that attack. But
mm,
I'll just say it was super weird. There were bends in reality. I was having missing time. There were different entities, or what I thought were different entities, showing up. Now, fast forward um, to a couple of weeks, I think it was 3 weeks in, this female healer was saying that she could help me with this, because I was like desperate. I was reaching out to people in my community, and I was saying, like, what do you do for a severe attack? Because visualizing white light wasn't working.
mm,
That was not a powerful enough technique. I was burning sage. That wasn't working. And everybody was saying, "Did you try burning sage?" And I would be like, "Oh my God, just kill me now." Like,
mm,
just I've tried. Do you think I don't know how to not like that, to not try that? And I was just
wow,
really at my wit's end. And there were a lot of people that were saying things like, "Well, it's not real. It's just part of your inner shadow, like unhealed inner shadow." And then there were other people saying, "Well, maybe you might have bad karma, and it's your fault because you drew it to you." And I can't, like, they would say, "Well, they can't get involved because they don't want to take on that I mean, it was just all sorts of ridiculousness that was very upsetting, because
mm,
I just needed help and not victim shaming,
yes,
victim
yes,
blaming. One day I got on the floor and I did some yoga, because I was like, "Oh my God, is this attack going to be with me for the rest of my life? I am so tense and so stressed out. I don't understand what's happening." And so I got on the floor, I did some yoga for an hour, And then when I stood back up, I was in, that more relaxed, altered state that we can get in when we've been meditating or doing yoga. And when I stood up, I glanced down at the book that this person, that this healer, that healer had given me a book, or I had bought a book from her. I looked down at it and I said, like, I suddenly saw the truth. Because on the book cover, supposed to be angel wings and all these clouds, was actually about 100 demon faces. Well, like through with my intuitive sight, I gasped and I said, "Oh my gosh." And so I called my friend and I talked to her for like 2 hours, recounting everything because I said, but she's so nice. I can't believe. I kept saying, I can't believe it. I'm having a hard time believing that this is coming from her. It's impossible to include every detail. So I know that I'm skipping things. My first book tell the entire story, all the little details. It's darkness disguised as light is the
I
first
have.
book. So that
Mm.
what I discovered was that this council of 12 angels that she believed she was working with was actually an entity that I didn't even know existed. Okay. So here's where we get into this idea where, well, if you believe in it, you'll create it or whatever. Well, I'd never even heard of jinn. Jinn is a certain type of entity from Middle Eastern folklore. But here's the thing, since then, I have encountered multiple jinn. Currently in my program, about a fourth of my members have jinn, the others have demon attachments or um, are under attack by dark shamans or dark practitioners. And so it's like a whole mixture, but jinn are not uncommon and you don't have to go to the Middle East to pick up one. And so the thing about jinn is that they not only are masterful shapeshifters, like some entities, we know that demons can shapeshift. The thing about jinn is that they can shapeshift into multiple entities at once. So, for example,
Wow.
it's very common for them to pretend to be a council of angels or a council. Of course, we don't have time for all the stories today, but I'm going to jump ahead and say I had a run in with a jinn after I moved to Arizona. I moved cross country going, I got to get away from that gin in Kansas City. I moved and I went to a New Age bookstore, and there was one in the New Age bookstore pretending to be a high vibrational extraterrestrial being. And it tried to follow me home. And I had this whole encounter where it then shapeshifted and said that it was the Council of Orion and it wanted to channel messages through me. And so now we're kind of getting into the false light thing.
Mm.
Jinn are one example of entities that I would consider under that umbrella term of false light, negative entities posing as benevolent beings of light. And so, like, I've literally seen it in action, but going back again, 2016, the trauma, because I actually, once I realized what happened with her, what was happening with this healer, and that it was a jinn and she wasn't working with angels, there was this other thing that was working with her that was fooling her. I Once I realized it, then he attacked me really, like really severely. And
Wow.
I talk about that in the group. Like, I thought it was going to kill me. It was really, like, it ramped up really bad once I saw the truth. But obviously, I was able to clear that. I never did find a mentor who could say, this is what's happening and this is how to clear it. I did, thank goodness, encounter a few people who had little bits of information, like little bits of vital details that I was able to take in.
Mm.
So I was able to clear that entity. And as a result, so that happened in the spring of 2016, and that whole summer of 2016, I had this huge awakening, and it was like all this information was waking up. Now, I used to, and maybe even in my book, I say something like I was receiving a lot of downloads, and there was someone, a new friend of mine, who pointed out, well, that sounds like like channeling. And I said, oh no, no, I don't mean channeling. So I need to change that word. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say that it was downloads because it was within me and
Mm,
it was
mhm,
awakening within
mm,
me, like this knowledge as though it was always there. It just woke up, and I would there was one time where I spent hours talking to some people about all these details about psychic protection, and I remember thinking, where did I get that from? Like, how do I know that? I didn't have someone who taught me that. I didn't read it in a book. The books that I was finding at that time were not aligned with the knowledge that I was um, awakening to. And so anyway, it was a very interesting summer. It also awakened the ability to see and feel and perceive and know false light entities. And I can say that with full confidence. This
mhm.
is not ego. This is just, a master pianist could say they are an excellent pianist. That's what they excel at. I'm not that good at playing the piano, but this is something that was awakened within me.
Mm,
I do believe that more people will be waking up with this. A lot of people aren't awake with this knowledge yet. And so I'm just kind of at the front of the line helping people along, and we're all on an equal level, and so this is absolutely something that I can see, this false light. I can see it, I can feel it. That summer, I remember going to like a psychic fair, and I walked around the fair and I was like, that person, no, I wasn't literally pointing, but I was thinking in my head, because my approach is I'm not the energy police. I'm not going to go and call everybody out. Like, I'm going to just get on my YouTube channel and share my knowledge for whoever wants to hear it. But I'm not going to go like calling out every practitioner and wagging my finger at them, because that's not how I roll.
yes.
But in my own mind, I was looking at different healers and different psychics, and I was like, that person thinks they're channeling a message from this, like, because I could see like this alien, and then it would shift, and
Mm,
I would see this super dark being. I would see like both forms, right? This one lady thought that her aunt was channeling messages through her, and I was like, that is not her aunt. It's this super dark entity that's standing behind her. And it was just kind of shocking at first. When I first had this ability, it was like, how come all these people can't see this?
mm.
But again, I still like I am seeing more and more people waking up to this. I know you're interested in the topic. You've expressed interest in it more. There's more people who are wanting to know what this is all about, and I think more people will develop the ability to have that spidey sense to be able to feel whether they're a professional psychic, like a professional psychic or healer or a client, to be able to have that sense if something is authentic or if it's false light, if it's false. But here's a little clue. This is what people don't want to hear, is that false light is extremely prevalent. A lot of people are I've talked to people about this, and and they say, "Oh, but I would never channel a false light entity." And I actually talked with this one gal, really sweet gal, and she said, "I checked with Archangel Michael, and he said that I don't have any false light entities." Now, I believe in real Archangel Michael, so I'm not anti-angel. Like, I believe there's an authentic being that is benevolent that we call Archangel Michael. But like I said, I can see it, right? I can see that if it's a real authentic entity or not. And I was just like, oh dear, because what she did was she asked her false light entity that was posing as Archangel Michael if she had any false light entities around her. But um, like I said before, or I sort of alluded to this, that like I can't force people to be ready to hear this.
Mm.
Um, I just write my books and I go on my YouTube channel and talk and talk and talk for hours, and whoever's ready for it. And I don't try to cram anything down anybody's throat. And so I just, and anybody, like whenever I can see something like that, sometimes I will say I'll push a little bit, but most of the time that's not what people really want. They're on their path, and I can't be meddling with everybody. But it's definitely a weird place to
Yeah.
be seeing all of this. And it's like, I would say finally this year, I have finally come to a place where I just feel an open heartedness and a love and a peace in my heart, that I can be sitting across from someone that maybe has like 10 false light entities that are channeling messages, and I can just love them. And it
Mm.
wasn't that I didn't love them before, it was that I just felt so much shock. Like, why are they not seeing it? This is so upsetting. And I'm so upset that this is happening on the planet. And why that existential, like, why? Finally, years after that 2016 attack, I'm finally like, I can just be at peace, and just
Mm.
I'm at peace with being able to share my message. And
Yeah.
I'm, wherever people are at is totally fine. And to just be able to hold space for all of it. And man, when you start to see that the reality that you thought was real before, like when all of that starts to crash down, because in 2016 all the things that I thought I believed, like I believed that negative entities can't hurt you. I believed that if you focused on high vibes, or that you focused on positive things and never thought about anything negative, negative stuff couldn't touch, like all these
Yeah.
things. And I also believed that God or creator doesn't allow those things, like all these beliefs that I had. And also like just the whole idea of so much false light, so much trickster stuff going on. All of it just blew my mind. And I went through years of existential crisis.
I want to know the totality of what you're referring to in terms of um like from your understanding, is it your belief that all councils of whatever 6, 8, 12 is a false light, or is there a mixture of both?
Excellent question. And I love that you asked it, because there's probably other people that are like, are all councils bad? Is that
Yeah.
what she's saying? Right. All councils of beings are not all bad. Okay. There are individual and groups of beings that are authentically who they say they are. And then there are also tons of tricksters. So I brought up Archangel Michael earlier, so let's use him as an example. As we'll start simple with an individual being. So from what I can see, with my ability to see false light, I truly believe there is a real, actual Archangel Michael. And I also see that Archangel Michael is a favorite, so to speak, of all the trickster beings. There are jinn who like to shapeshift, demons like to shapeshift. There are dark human souls that like to shapeshift. There are a variety of different entities that are at different levels of proficiency in shapeshifting, and they love to pretend to be Archangel Michael, because a lot of people in our day and age call on Archangel Michael for protection. And so, and that here's where the existential crisis comes in: is someone's calling out for help.
Mm.
Archangel Michael, please help me. And this false being shows up. And that's really unfair. That's really unfair that that happens in our reality. But so to answer your question, though, there's the real, and then there are a lot of being, not just one specific being that's always pretending to be Archangel Michael, but it's like any being that's a shapeshifter might pretend to be Archangel Michael. Other real authentic beings that shapeshifters like to pretend to be. Mary Magdalene is a favorite. The Virgin Mary, Mother Mary, Jesus. So we live in Western culture, so there are religious figures from other traditions as well. But these are the ones that I see the most with the clientele that I work with. Even though I work with people all over the world, it's mostly Western religions. And so those are very, very common, right? So there's like the authentic being that was Jesus who walked on the planet, who walked on the earth. And then there are a whole bunch of tricksters who are like, oh, today I'm going to pretend to be Jesus
Mm,
so that this person will. The idea is to get the person to open up and welcome it in. That's the individual beings. When it comes to groups of like councils of beings, I have noticed that the councils of beings have more of a tendency to be false light. Trickster beings, especially jinn, they love to work through channelers. And I was just working with a client today. We were talking about a jinn issue and how jinn love to do, let's say, like fake healing, like to heal someone. And it's a real healing, but it's from a false source, right? Because jinn love to be worshipped. If
mm,
if a jinn pretends to be Jesus or some other religious figure, then because they are like narcissists and psychopaths rolled into one.
mm.
So, and I should mention, I actually saw I think it was after 2016. I was in a Christian church and I saw a very large gin, and it was a big plasma energy above the congregation,
Wow.
and it was pretending to be God. And that blew my mind because I was like, okay, I knew shapeshifters existed, but mind blown, like God would allow some some trickster to pretend to be God. Like that blew my mind. Like how is that allowed? Like that just blew my mind. Like nobody is off limits, right? Like anybody can be
Mhm,
falsified. So tricksters do, jinn in particular, are excellent at pretending to be a group of entities. So there are a lot of people who think they're channeling a group of intergalactic beings or angelic beings or ascended beings or whatever, and it is not that at all. And that, I got to say, we were kind of talking about this before we started the official recording, that like what I'm saying is not something people like to hear.
mm.
So thank you for letting me talk about the hard stuff, you know, um, because I think it's just important to plant those seeds and people can decide for themselves. They can use their own discernment. But I do want to I feel called to give one little tip that if people are listening to this and they're going, oh my gosh, well, like, if like is my spirit guide or my spirit guides or whatever I'm channeling, like, is that good or is it bad? Is it false? Like, oh my gosh, here is one red flag that happens a lot. And so this will give people just a little bit of a little way, like a little bit of discernment.
Yeah.
So one thing that happens quite a lot is if someone has a spirit guide, or like if they are not a professional channeler, they just are working with a spirit guide, or if they are channeling some stuff. Either way, if they are in meditation, prayer, focusing with their channeling beings or their spirit guide, and if there is even the split second that the facade slips, because this happens a lot. So they think they're working with Saint Germain at like, oh, this is my spirit guide. And then they're seeing this beautiful being of light, and then all of a sudden its image shifts for like almost like less than a split second, where it's almost imperceptible, where for a moment the image looks dark or scary or unsettling. And then it goes back to how it was before. And I've had so many students over the years who will come to me for a session and say, I want to know if my spirit guide that I'm working with is authentic. And they'll tell me, I've heard that story like hundreds of times, of people saying,
Wow.
I was in meditation, I was connecting with this being of light. I was sure that it was so and so being. And then for a split moment, something happened, and it's the image shifted. And it could just be in their mind's eye if they're not clairvoyant, but they're just connecting with it in their mind's eye. And what I would tell people is that's all that you need to know. That
Wow.
split second, you just saw the truth.
Have they expressed to you having a feeling in their body, whether that their gut, their heart, like when they're
Yes,
seeing that split second?
yes,
Yeah. Can you talk
yes.
about that?
The feeling, I'm glad you said that, because I almost mentioned it, but I didn't. So I'm glad. The feeling is that something feels wrong.
Mm,
This, like, it's not quite right. Something feels like a sinking feeling in your stomach, or this, like, your spidey sense. I call it your that spidey sense. That's like, it feels like there's something dark, even if they're not someone who gets a lot of visual imagery. It's like all of
mhm,
a sudden I felt like there was something dark about it, about this guide. That so those who are not very visual, they might connect with a guide by just feeling like their guide is with them, right? But then there's a moment where suddenly they feel a sense of malevolence, a
mm.
sense of negativity or evil from that being. And it's like, and then it goes away, and then it's all like fluffy love and light, bliss feelings. And so those are some feeling kind of sensations that might happen if it's false light.
We see false light in schools, in Hollywood, in
Yeah.
politics, and I mean church. I mean, it's in all of them. And
Mhm.
in general, I think it's so important for us to talk about not giving away our power to any one thing.
Politics are a very touchy subject, and there's a couple comments that I'll make. And one is that there is this human nature to um, think that there is a savior of some kind that's going to let us off the hook for doing our own damn work. And we think that whoever, like the Pleiadians, are coming to save us. Like, I remember during COVID, people were saying there's spaceships over the planet and they're going to save us. And I immediately recognized, oh, it's that savior. It's
Mhm.
that human nature thinking that there are other beings or some person in politics, the incoming president, whoever is going to like save us all. They are the magic one, the one that's going to fix everything. And I don't think that that's healthy.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I think we're in agreement on that I think that we need to take responsibility for our own lives. Yes, what's going on in politics affects the little people. It affects our livelihoods. Like that, all of that is very real.
yes,
But we can't put our power
yes,
into other people. We can't think that they're going to fix everything.
yes, yeah.
There's something else that I will say, and I will say this carefully. It's something that I realized uh, through clairvoyant vision as I was watching things unfold with our recent United States election. And it was this I don't know why I'm shocked by these things because I shouldn't be shocked anymore.
Right? Yeah.
But I was watching some things unfold, and it really drove home for me with because I can see entities. I can see when an entity is in someone or with someone, or if they're being driven by like whatever they're being driven by. And it just, what became very clear to me is that there are what I call dark forces, like the negative spiritual forces. The negative spiritual forces are working through all of it. I don't care what
Yes.
political party that you say that you are affiliated with. Unfortunately, it is woven into all of it. And it's true, like you said, with Hollywood and with corporations,
Yes.
both small, small corporations. We have different like branches of businesses in like the Tucson area, which is an hour from where I live, and I've seen like super dark forces working through certain health organizations
Yeah.
locally, and then also, and I'm not talking about the jab. I mean, we could talk about, well, I don't want to talk about the jab today, but like, I'm not even referring to that. I'm just talking about regular healthcare
Yes.
services and healthcare services for women,
Yeah.
like gynecological services. Like, there's like super dark stuff in this organization that's like all through Tucson. I'm like, oh my God, it blows my mind. So literally, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And yes, that can take us into existential crisis of
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what's going on in the world? But we have to get to a point where all of us like-minded people, we rally together,
Mm.
and we make these connections. We make these connections on social media, on YouTube,
Yeah.
on podcasts, and we also recognize that through our own actions every day, we can show. I know this sounds maybe fluffy, but I believe that it's true that through our own actions of showing compassion and empathy to our fellow sentient beings, human
Yeah.
beings, and other beings, through showing compassion and helping, no matter who that person is, no matter what their political
Yeah.
party is, no matter what, whatever their views are. And I'm not saying to agree to be abused or be someone's punching bag. I'm not saying that, but to show up in the world as someone bringing peace
Yeah.
and kindness. And we can do that in little ways in our family, and we can do it out in the community. So those are the little ways that we can have hope and have an enjoyable life
Yeah.
in a world that, even if we weren't talking about dark forces and negative spiritual forces, let's just look at reality. I mean, the fact that there is um, there are people starving, there is um, there's slavery, there's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's genocide happening
Yeah.
still, I mean, all these horrible things. But if we're living a um, somewhat sheltered life, we just have like a job, and then we come home to our house and we watch TV, like we don't recognize that the world is not a friendly place for a lot of people. And then when we start to think of these spiritual warfare issues, it kind of bursts that bubble of that false belief that everything is happy and unicorns,
Hmm.
um, because I think we want to think that the world is a happy place and no one is harmed, no one, like no one in our family would ever be hurt by anything, but bad things happen all the time
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
world. And it's just it I'm not disclosing anything new. Like
Yeah.
this is what our world is, and it's up to us to find peace in the ways that we can find peace, whether that's spending time with family, spending time in nature. And I say this as someone who did go through some years of existential crisis while I was going through very extreme illness, and I was in like what I call torture level pain for about 5 years with chronic kidney stones.
Wow.
And I was like, I had 5 years, well, 4 years straight where it was like constant kidney stones, like pure suffering. And I've come out of that. I wasn't able to feel at peace when I was going through that. I'm just saying
I'm so
that
sorry.
was not peaceful. I'm just saying that I'm not saying all these fluffy things as someone who's had it easy.
Yeah,
I think that we can come through some of these difficulties, and we can say, okay, there are still small little things that we can do in the world. And so that's my like little message of hope, with the fact that there are many who are feeling despair over the politics. And we're also talking about very difficult spiritual issues today as well. So it's like we're in a reality where there's both, and where there are these very difficult things, whether there's something very difficult happening in your family, or there's a serious illness, or someone has passed away, or there's poverty or homelessness, like all of those real life issues. But yet there are ways we can find little times of peace and
absolutely.
connection with other human beings. Whether we're talking about spiritual empowerment or spiritual warfare or personal empowerment or just thriving in this crazy world, whatever reason we're talking about this, the the way to truly be in your power is to be in your body. And this is just what happens mentally, emotionally, physiologically, that when we get overwhelmed, when we get stressed out, we tend to come ungrounded, and our energy goes out of our body. Maybe our energy is kind of like over here or up here, or we're kind of wishing that we weren't here on the planet. We're kind of wanting to be up in the higher realms. So we're hanging out, like kind of our energy field is kind of like up here somewhere and not down in our body. But that's not a place of empowerment. That you can be the most powerful and the most protected from, like, you name it, all the spiritual things, physical things, 3D things. You are the most protected and the most powerful when you are fully in your body, number one. And number two, when you are purposely, consciously connected with earth energy. Because let's face it, people, you are in a physical incarnation on the planet Earth. And if you're disconnected from the energy of the planet,
Mm,
then you're not receiving life force energy in the way that you should. People who aren't connected with with nature, with the earth, plugged in like an electrical socket, like plugging in to get your power, they accidentally are trying to connect in and source power from, maybe the president, like, oh, the president is going to save me. This is my savior. Or people, relationships, significant other. They try to source their energy from other living or non-living, or like either 3D beings or spiritual beings, right? They're trying to source their energy out here this way. And that's not a that's well, that's energy vampirism, first of
yeah.
all. And second of all, it's not healthy. It's a
Okay.
recipe for codependency.
Mhm.
So I 1,000% agree with you. The power is in staying grounded and centered. And it's like when you're that tree with the big, huge trunk and the deep, deep roots,
Yes.
things can happen in the world globally or in your personal world, and you are able to stay calm.
Mm,
And we get more stressed out and we get pushed over by the world when we're not rooted. A few things that I will say, because I know for a fact that at some point there are going to be some people who visit your channel and find this video who are experiencing some type of, I'll call it, negative spiritual interference. It could be a full on psychic attack, or it could be like just some weird spiritual stuff that they don't understand.
mm,
Or it could be an entity attachment that happened for some reason. or black magic. There's so many weird things that can happen. There are a lot of genuine spiritual seekers out there that, let's say they go to a healer that they think is a good healer. And I'm not saying that all healers are bad, but I'm saying this is very common to go to someone that you think that you can trust, and then something bad happens, whether the healer is the one attacking or there was an entity attached to them. There's just so many things that can happen. And I just want to tell you that you're not alone, that there's a place where you can get your questions answered, and there are other people who've gone through similar circumstances. And I'll share some resources and then I'll broaden it a little bit for those who haven't gone through those kinds of things. So there's my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And if you sign up for the email list there, there's a quiz, a free quiz. So you can determine if you are suspecting that you might be dealing with a psychic attack of some kind. You can go through the quiz and rate your symptoms. And then there are a whole bunch of other resources that'll come to you through those emails. There's just there's a free energy clearing session if you feel like there's some weird energy. That is a powerful session, and it's totally free. And then I also have a YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary YouTube channel, and there is a ton there. I don't know, there's just like so many hours of free content on there. So if this topic interests you, head over there. And then if you want to make more of a connection, there's my Facebook group, also called Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and it's the Facebook group, not the page. And we have a free class in there, a free Zoom class for those members every month. And we talk about, whether it's psychic protection issues, empath issues, um, false light. What did we talk? Oh gosh, I can't even think. We've just talked about all sorts of things. And then I upload those to the YouTube channel. So you can get access to those either way. So I'll broaden it now and just say that if you are here on Ali's channel, you are a truth seeker. So thank you for being a truth seeker. Thank you for being someone who's willing to be grounded and centered and anchored and really tapping into your deepest wisdom, not looking for it all out here in saviors, whoever the savior might be, the aliens or the whoever or the person, right? But to drop into our inner knowing to find whatever our truth is, because my I don't claim that my truth is the ultimate truth. We all are truth seekers. So the more grounded and anchored you are, the more you're going to be able to find whatever your truth is. Amen.